and very pleased to welcome you to this second of 3 ambulance webinars happening this fall. And I'd like to ask, of course, Lars Erik Svanberg, who's leading the Healthcare in Danger project at the Norwegian Red Cross, to introduce these webinars and to remind us why we're here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Very happy that we're finally able to connect together. As probably all of you know, we were supposed to have this meeting two weeks ago. Not always the techniques is on our side, but we made it up and running again. Thanks for your support, Reda. Welcome to the second webinar of the fall of 2018. In the Ambulance Community of Action. As you know, this is an initiative by Norwegian Red Cross, working together with the ICRC and the Geneva Learning Foundation and a core group of very dedicated volunteers who really wants to create a platform for information sharing and learning, identifying good practices and how we can learn from each other as ambulance workers and first responders. On the first round we had was sort of a recap of what we've done so far with the learnings for the past couple of years, the case studies that have been documented, and the database that we have on case studies, the highlighting of the platform that we have for learning. And now this second round of webinars is really when we go into looking specifically at the cases that we have. For today, we have selected 2 cases, and I think Reda, you'll go through how the structure of the webinar will be. There is a slide on that, but I just want to encourage you to be active, ask questions, and have an open mind for learning and for participating. And this is sort of a bit learning by doing for us as well, where we want to figure out how we can best sort of organize these webinars and engage the community of action in the best possible way, so there's actually a very useful platform for you to spend your time on. Thanks to everyone for joining, and looking forward to this hour together.
Great, thank you very much, Lars Erik. And some of you have already done this, but I'd like to ask every one of you to type into the chat window. So not in the Q&A, please, but in the chat window, the city and country that you are connecting from. So we get a sense of, so for me, it's Geneva, Switzerland. So I'll type Geneva, Switzerland, and you will see now Geneva, Switzerland appear in the chat. So if you're not sure where that is, yes, so we have Rizwana from Pakistan Red Crescent in Karachi. Michael Bradfield is in Crawley in the UK. So Uzi is in Amiens, Israel. Wargle, Australia. That's for Roland Prieur-Vasser. Aaron is in Singapore. Yeah, we should have everybody. This, okay, Syed Adel Hassan from Muslim Hands Pakistan chapter. All right. Christophe from Guinea-Bissau. So we should be able to see. Everyone can do this if you can find the chat. That's step 1 to getting used to this platform that may or may not be familiar to you. All right, and we have Daria Kinfosile from Nigerian Red Cross Society. Welcome to all of you. This is always a pleasure to feel people connecting from all over the world. So Ramawati from Indonesian Red Cross. Rama, we of course, and many of you are graduates or alum of the ambulance exercises we ran in 2016 and 2017. Yes, Aaron Lim has a point. You got to click on send to all panelists and attendees, else everyone cannot see what you type. Wichi from Singapore Red Cross Society. Okay, wonderful to see. And again, as Lars Erik said, we do expect this to be a participatory event. So the point is not just to listen, but also to present. We have 2 amazing presenters today, as well as what your colleagues are expecting and why they need your support is to get your feedback and to make, so to look by examining these individual cases they're going to present to actually help think about our practices as ambulance pre-hospital emergency care practitioners. Welcome back, Irene, Alexander, so many names here. Let's now move on. So the resources, so if you attended the first webinar, you received these in a personal message. For those of you, everyone who then registered should also have received these resources. These are the written case studies, peer-reviewed case studies that were developed by Christophe Lobidil and Aloysius Alvarez in the ambulance exercises. This is what they're going to be presenting to you. We want to spend more time on discussion, which is why we shared the case studies ahead of time. So I've just put the, okay, and it keeps going back to, yeah. So I've just shared the link. If you haven't had a chance to look at them, do click on that link and you should be able to see them now. All right, and glad to see that Hannah Kade has just joined us, another member of the ambulance team that is helping to supporting these events. So our agenda will be joined at the halfway mark by Agnieszka Czolowinska from the ICRC. But then the main event, of course, are the case studies presentation, which will be followed by discussion as well as preparation for the next webinar, which is coming very soon on the 29th of November. So without further ado, we want to jump right in, and I'd like to go to our first presenter, Christophe Lobidil, to tell us to make a short presentation summarizing what many of you, we hope, have already read and considered and thought about, which is the case study he developed in an ambulance exercise. So Christophe.
Thank you, Reda. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. This is Christophe from Guinea-Bissau. And I would first like to thank the organization, especially Norwegian Red Cross, for giving us this opportunity, and thank all the participants for being ready to get something from my side. You know, we all have many experience, but sharing the experience is the best way of learning. So, Reda, may I go ahead?
Yes, please. You need to share your screen.
Okay. Yeah. So I have to. Oh my God. Let me just share.
All right. So you will see a share button in the panel that has mute stop video participants, and if you click on the share button, then you'll be able to either share your entire screen or share just your what you want to what you have prepared for us.
Okay, and then that's mean I'm not going to go through the case study, but just what I've prepared, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
So
good.
We'd like to keep the presentation short in order to leave really a lot of time for discussion.
Good. Are you able to see something from there?
Yes.
Good. This is the text I wrote that you are able to get because it has been shared. So I'm not going to read, I'm just going to give you something brief. But first, I'm Christophe Lobby, professional nurse, and I have been also trained as mine medic, first by Swedish Foundation for Mine Action, and by Swiss Foundation for Mine Action, and then second time I was trained as mine medic by Swedish NGO called MSB, twice in Sweden. So I'm professional nurse and mine medic as well. And for the moment, I'm not in the country concerning this case. I'm in Bissau, where I work with United Nations peace building mission as a professional nurse. Then, as you can see, the case I'm talking about is the case that happened in 2004, and that was in my home country, which is Democratic Republic of Congo. Then you can see that this is Ituri has territory which is east side of DR Congo. And you guys are always informed. From 19 to 99, we faced very, very strong war during the period in DRC, and it was especially inter-ethnic war. And that inter-ethnic war was not manageable by the government. Even the government authority was not able to maintain the peace. So after having this strong war that our government was not able to manage, then there was need of peacekeeping mission in DR Congo. And the peacekeeping mission in DR Congo has one department called UNMAS. They are coordinating concerning the mine action operation. So they invited the organization called Swiss Foundation for Mine Action. Then I was a team of the member. So due to the security and stability, we were forced to work with escort that were provided by the organization, as you know, MONUSCO actually in the DRC. Then when you work as humanitarian workers, the rules say you are not forced to work using the military escort because you are using partiality, neutrality. So it is very, very good for you to be familiarized with the population as medical, as humanitarian workers. But the decision was made by hierarchy after visiting the DRC, especially Ituri, where we were working, then giving us the right to work without escort. We tried for some time, it was okay. Then, unfortunately, we went to the SAD of Irumu, which is especially very, very, very dangerous period during the time. Then you saw the scenario. We went following the rules. We have to interact with the authority and get the approval for the work. Then we did. We were allowed to work properly. But as I told you, there was no presence of army, there was no presence of government policy. There were only uncontrolled group. And we were right to work, but unfortunately aggressed by two guys carrying the guns. Because we parked the car, the guy appeared shouting, aggressive, why are you here? Who told you that we have the landmine? So it was really very difficult, but we maintain quietness. We respond to the ASWAs without panic. Then in the end of the day, they were able to little move, bit aware, taking decision using their local language. So the decision taken by those two guys carrying guns was that they better call for the group member so that they will be able to manage, because we were a very big team. We were like 80 members during the operation. So we got the information from one of our members who was able to get what they were planning to do. Then immediately we shared the information. And after sharing the information, we plan to move immediately from the side using alternative way. And what I've learned, what is pushing me today to talk about this case, it was that that case was concerning our life. As you have noted in my writing, this case should have pushed us in big trouble. We should have been kidnapped, killed, or injured. And as you see, the same day after them to be prepared, one NGO was aggressively attacked, and then one was killed. And the reason why I'm putting this, if we go through different convention, different rules concerning the humanitarian operations, the humanitarian worker are not supposed to be aggressed. So this was like the result of ignorance for the ARM group. And what did you learn? What I learned from this was that as good as humanitarian workers, we have to be conducting security risk assessment before any emergency humanitarian operation or in kind of activity. As you can see, our more activity is to provide the care. We are hospital care provider, but the safety is the most important things. Then it's also a good idea, even a strong idea, to make sure you have in place a good communication system so that in case you have a problem or you are in trouble, you may be able to contact the hierarchy. So since we were under UN rules and regulation, we were connected to Sierra base of MONUC. That time it was MONUC, actually it is MONUSCO. Then we got the information that really they are monitoring, then we have to move. And what I've learned again is that being in touch with all the authority or the people who are taking part of the conflict or their leaders, if it is possible, then you have to make sure they get clearly the kind of your activities, and then you are allowed to operate so that you may also make it safe. Then the last thing I can show you is that most of the time, the people carrying the guns within, especially in DRC, they are a result of the inter-ethnic conflict. That was a civilian war. So they didn't have time. Maybe they are not aware of the international humanitarian law on the right of armed conflict rules that has been signed in Geneva. So different kind of convention, they are not aware. They don't know how to use properly the guns they are carrying. They don't know as well who can be the symbol they have to attack. They are not supposed to attack the NGOs. They are not supposed to attack the care provider, the civilian, but this is not the case in my country. Really, I'm sure you are aware of what is happening in my country. Operating in DRC is not something easy. And then there was some change after facing this situation, because immediately the work has to be stopped. You know, once one was killed from another NGOs, then the area was not safe to operate without escort. Then the rule, then the order from the hierarchy was that we have to stop the work. Then we move from Ituri to South Kivu. South Kivu is over 1,500 from Ituri. Then we went to South Kivu. Then we were able to make sure that all the activity we are conducting, the authority, including the armed group, the rebels, are aware that we are doing for all. We are not taking part. So what I can see in the end of this activity is really, I've learned a lot from this. But if you have some questions regarding this case, please don't hesitate. Then I have to apologize, especially because I'm using English, which is not my professional or my background language, but I'm very motivated to share. I'm really pleased to share with you as I learn from you guys. So please feel free. In case you did not get something, then I will make sure you have the idea. Thank you.
Merci. Thank you, Christophe. So let me go back to the presentation, to our screen here. Let me just do that switch. Yeah, so we have some questions, quite substantive ones in the Q&A. So I suggest we take some questions. First here, quick comments, if any, from Lars, Michael, and Hannah, and Aloysius, who's our next presenter. Tackle a couple of the questions and then go to Aloysius Alvarez. Let's try to make that quick. We're already at the 21-minute mark. So Lars, Michael, Hannah, Aloysius, if you would like to unmute yourselves, you should be able to do that. If you have a comment to make, let's start with Lars.
Sure. I think we had noted on the presentation as well a few questions relating to the presentations, but as you say, Christophe, I think it's I mean, your case is very I mean, it was obviously a strong experience of you, and there are so many questions that can be asked and related to this context, both related to armed escort, the development of SOPs. I'd like to direct the attention to a couple of the experts that we really have, such as Michael. I don't know, Michael, if you have done any reflections on the case and would like to share any of your sort of points of view or how to sort of.
All right, let's hear from Michael Bradfield then. Michael, you'll need to unmute yourself as well. Or I can unmute you. We haven't heard from you yet. I don't know if, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Reda. Yes, sorry, I was trying to unmute, but it wasn't seeming to work. So thank you, Christophe, for your presentation. I thought was excellent and really clear lessons and reflections that you learned from that, which I think is what made your case study very interesting. And particularly since you identified that the armed groups themselves were, even though we talk about clearly identifying ourselves in these contexts, and you said that they knew who you were and they probably knew why you were there, but they were more kind of angry as to why you decided to turn up or what information you had, and that was their reaction to it. And I think it just goes to show that even if you're very clearly identified and you're operating in an area where people know what you're doing, you can still be at risk of violence. And I thought that was a very good reflection that you made there. I'd be interested to ask from an organization point of view, whether you had any internal process afterwards around this. Did you report this incident back? And I know we talked about this in the ambulance sessions before, whether or not your processes or procedures changed, or whether, and this is to the wider group as well, we kind of feel that these things are just unpredictable. Is there anything else that we could have done or you could have done in that context, to minimize it? It sounds as if you dealt with it very, very well, but what else could we have done in that situation, or is it purely just random? I guess would be a question for the group.
All right. Thank you, Michael. So we have many questions queued up in the Q&A panel. So I suggest that we use the remaining 6 minutes to get to those. So Aaron Lim, and you note that you can upvote. You can vote on questions by clicking on the little thumb next to a question if you think it's especially important and that we should get to it first. So we have, let me see, I thought we had, yeah. So we have Aaron Lim, who is the first to ask a question in the Q&A panel. I noticed you mentioned interwork ethics conflict. Could you elaborate if that is not too sensitive? Christophe? And again, if you could keep your responses short and to the point.
I did not get it. Can you repeat, please? So it's, Aaron wants to know, you mentioned something about conflict in ethics between interwork. So
could you elaborate if that's not too sensitive?
Yeah, I think actually it is something which is not confidential, because if the United Nations came to DRC, it was especially because of what was happening in Ituri, and it was ethnic conflict. The conflict was between two tribes. It was between Lendu and the Hima. So the solution was not possible from our government. The Uganda army or government tried, they couldn't. The French army force armies came to try to resolve the case. They were able to clear only the Bunia town, which is like capital of Ituri province. I don't know how to express it clearly, but then from there, it was really needed for the UN to bring the different contingents as peacekeepers. So that was the solution for the conflict to be stopped. But after the conflict stopping, the armed group remained. So even up to now, we are still having some group in the Ituri. So I don't know whether this is enough.
All right, thank you. All right, we have a question from John Lovett. How did this change your practices following this incident? Did you then bring armed security along? And a comment from Irene Opio from Kenya. Yes, your safety comes first always. Let the security make the scene safe before you come in. But John is asking, what did you actually change following this incident? And again, if you could give a short answer and stick to the point, that would be much appreciated, because we have many questions.
Yeah, exactly. Because of the insensibility of the security, we, on the beginning, were forced to use the escort. Then following the rules from organization, we have to work without escort. Then it was not possible after the incident. As I told you, the incident has forced us to move from the area to another region, more than 1,000 kilometers, which is South Kivu. So really all the people or the organization working within the area during that time were using the support from the UN, because there was no legal army in the area.
Okay. Thank you.
In the area, yes. Good.
Thank you, Christophe. All right, let me look for the John Lovett wants to know, and I would ask all participants to answer him using the chat, because he's asking everyone in the group, does anyone do a threat assessment prior to entering any of these regions? So a region in which there is known to be conflict. So that's not a question for you, but that's a question for the participants. If you'd like to answer John Lovett's question, he is interested in your answer, and so are we. Comment from Uzi Benzivi. From my long years in war zone, this is not a simple situation, and we lost some of our crew. So, and his first idea is, how do I keep my crew alive? And he says it's not so easy. Thank you, Uzi, for sharing your experience. Syed actually wants to know, he says, indeed, very good and bravery act in front of armed gunmen. However, he wonders, was there not a security assessment before you started this mission?
Yeah, I took this idea from what was happening exactly in the area. Only the UNDSS during the period were able to conduct some security assessment. And as organization, we normally get the briefing from there. We should have get the briefing from them before moving. And for sure, the decision from UNDSS was without escort, no activity. But we did not get this because I don't know how it's happened. I may not replicate anyone for the moment, but really the rule from security as UN workers was to work with escort, and we were IC contract with UN-MAS, which is UN RTT. So the situation after security assessment may be better than operating without security assessment. For sure, there is some improvised incident, as you can see, but when you are aware, then you are strongly prepared. Thank you.
Okay, one last comment from Rizwana Memon. I'm really surprised to know that you went without any prior security assessment, and I'm glad that you came back safe and sound. And yes, the regret that you would have wanted to help, but because of the unsafe situation, you had to leave. So that is Rizwana's comments. We have, let me see, I think we have worked through the questions. There's some more comments from Uzi Benzivi. This is basic. We check the situation if we can save life. We have body armor so we can protect the crew. Sometimes the escort makes the situation more dangerous. There are also some great comments in the chat. Carla Estevez says, sometimes as a humanitarian worker, you expect that the parties to the conflict know about international law, but the reality is that they do not. Ramawati says, helper safety is number one. If we know the conditions is too dangerous and not safe for help, we must go away from the location, right? And that is a question that she asks. All right, so conscious of the time, we're now at the halfway mark. So I realize there are many sort of unspent questions and discussions. Would any of the panelists, so Lars-Erik Strandberg, Michael Bradfield, Hannah Kade, the A-team, would you like to make a final comment before we go to our next presenter?
From my side, I mean, I think we're touching on so many interesting issues, and I think that we could have talked for 3-4 hours just around these areas. But obviously, we have to limit ourselves. I think Fabian Cruz has a useful comment, and that is that we can, and remember that you can note questions that you might have following this webinar and email us. And we can try to sort of coordinate answers and share them and compare answers with own experiences. So and that is precisely what we really want these webinars to be as well. I mean, it's a dynamo for engaging discussions, and we want these discussions to take place outside the webinars itself as well. That's why we have the platform where we can share information and join in discussions and share experiences and lessons learned within each other's. And just by this half hour together, we see that there is so much engagement. So there is obviously a time and space for continuing this discussion outside the formal frame of the webinar as well.
Great, thanks, Lars-Erik. A comment from Hannah Kade, and then we'll go to Aloysius Ace Alvarez from Philippines Red Cross. Hannah?
Thank you, Rida. Thank you, Christoph, for sharing your story. I'm not gonna talk a lot. I just want to mention one very important thing you have said indirectly, the importance of the coordination and the communication in such a complicated situation. Even we will face a lot of challenges, but it keeps that the communication and coordination with all the parties, all colleagues, all the organization is very important in such a situation. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, everybody.
So thank you, Christophe Lobidil, and thank you for the attendees, the participants. These were, there's a lot of questions generated in very little time, some very pointed, to the point questions. And now we have a second case study. This is from Aloysius Anthony Alvarez, and he's going to introduce himself, and then he will have 10 minutes also to present his story. So I'm trying to unmute you. Yeah.
Hi,
okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. If you'd like to turn on your webcam, if your internet connection allows it, it's that's always that's even better. But we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Currently, I'm in one of our events in the Philippine Red Cross. We opened our new hemodialysis in the PRC in the Red Cross, so I cannot open my webcam right now.
Okay. Understood. The floor is yours. You have 10 minutes.
Okay. To summarize my case study. It is the Manila hostage crisis way back 2010. But first, I'm Aloysius Alvarez from the Philippine Red Cross. The time that the situation happened, I was still a new staff of the Philippine Red Cross as an ambulance dispatcher and the person in charge of the ambulance in Manila City. Currently, in the Philippine Red Cross, I'm a national field representative who handles the whole Philippines ambulances from the tip of Luzon to the Mindanao area, which have more conflict situation in our Mindanao area. But what I'm talking about today is about Manila hostage crisis, which I think everybody would have knowledge because it was very sensationalized through the media of the Philippines, and the involved party is not only in the Philippines, but there were Hong Kong nationals that were being hostage in an isolated situation. For the incident, we were called in the scene around 9 a.m. in the morning that there was an alleged hostage-taking situation in the Quirino Grandstand, which the Quirino Grandstand is located in in Manila City. The local government unit is in charge, but the Quirino Grandstand is a national owned area, which means inside Manila, there is the national government who's handling the area itself. Then the third part of it would be the involved party is not a Filipino, it is from an international or from a Hong Kong, which escalated the situation that should be a national crisis situation, but the Manila local government doesn't want the national government to be in charge of the situation. So that was one of the situations that happened. But at that time, I was currently the chapter service representative and handling the ambulances, which we have volunteers that are new on the shift that in the situation that happened. Most of our colleagues were new. Most of them are around 3 to 4 weeks who are experiencing ride along together with us in the ambulance. And unfortunately, the situation was a hostage taking in one of the areas of Manila. And one of the perpetrators, as said when we arrived at the scene, was a trained policeman or a policeman who was dismissed for allegedly having or dismissed because of involvement in extortion incidents. Early in the morning, there was no escalation of events since the demands of Mr. Mendoza was just merely putting back his post or his status as a police and to clarify his case. But in the afternoon, there was escalation because of the different people were involved, including the local government, the Manila police, the national police, the media, and there were communication inside the bus together with the media, together with the local government and other people who can communicate with the hostage taker. But in our case, as the ambulance crew, we were set outside the perimeter of the safe area which is around 500 meters away from the bus, and we were covered with fire trucks. So we were thinking that we are safe in that area because there were reports that since he is a policeman, he might be able to have access to handguns, semi-automatic weapons, and explosives. So what we did is we tried to get out of the visibility of the bus. So at least we will have a small chance of getting hit in the area as well. But since there were a lot of people involved from the situation, we tried to communicate with the crisis management team and the police to where to extract the victims if there is the situation and where to place them and bring them to the hospital immediately. But it really didn't happen to us. For our analysis, what lacks is the command and control or the command in place, since both the local government, the local police from Manila and the national police are having two different situations or decisions. Initially, we were not allowed to go inside the area, and then they declared that the scene was safe. So a policeman put down the yellow caution to allow us to access the area. So one of our ambulances from the Red Cross were in the scene, and then suddenly there was gunshot. And then that ambulance went to our side, to the opposite side, just to clear themselves out. And then eventually the police came in again and then tried to neutralize the situation. And then we were allowed again to enter the scene. That time, all the ambulances are inside the hazardous area and taking patients out of the ambulance, out of the bus. So basically for us, for the analysis, individually, as an individual, what we see or what I seen is, number one is, even though the people are new EMTs or doing ride-alongs can be in the situation that they don't expect it would happen to them. So what we did is we try to orient people, or train our volunteers or EMTs to see or to give them the situations or scenarios that might happen when they go out in the field. And then the SOPs would help definitely if there is. At the time that the 2000 event, there were no clear SOPs that we have that applied in the situation. And then ambulances are not unified, not like in other countries that they can communicate to each other. What happened to us is, since we have a lot of ambulance providers in the Philippines, there were a lot of frequencies of radios that we cannot communicate to each other face to face. So we need to to have things or to put communication in place for us to communicate to each other ambulances. And then one of the most important part for our analysis is the debriefing of the personnel in the scene as well. Reda?
Yes, thank you, Ace. All right, thank you for this presentation. We've received some great questions, and I suggest we start with those and then go to the panelists, as many of them are some of them are at least their clarification. You can also see on screen the questions for discussion prepared by the ambulance crew, so by the team that put this panel discussion together. So we have first question was again from Aaron Lim. Hi, Aloysius, thank you for sharing your invaluable experience with this hostage situation. Can I clarify if the main problem you highlighted was the lack of training for such a situation? I refer to your analysis in your case study towards the last paragraph. So again, because of time and because of how many questions we are trying to answer, Ace, if you could give a short answer to the point for Aaron.
Beforehand, our training for our volunteers is before you can go to an EMT course, we will require people to have the ambulance operation course and the first aid course, since there is no structured course at that time in the Philippines about the ambulances. We were trained by back then with Solfox, Virginia, EMTs. And then recently we were trained by Magen David Adom to have formalized the EMT training for the Philippines. So basically at the time before, we don't have really the structured training for the volunteers on how to deal with the situation.
Okay, thank you, Ace. Now, again, very practical question from Laura Alzapiedi. So, Dr. Alvarez, is there a specific way to park an ambulance in such a case of a hostage situation? Is there a specific regulation to coordinate how you park your ambulance in this kind of situation? Is there a specific way to position the vehicle and a specific way in which the crew must exit the vehicle? Uh-oh. All right, I'm no longer hearing Ace. Yes, are you able to hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so did you hear Laura's question?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so Laura wants to know, is there a specific way to park an ambulance in such a hostage situation? Do you have specific regulation to coordinate this? How do you position your vehicle, and is there a specific way in which the crew must exit?
Initially, we have the coordination with the local police, and they provided us the safe location where to park the ambulances. The specific part that they think the ambulance is safe is at the back of the fire truck. Since Quirino Grandstand is an open area or a public gathering area, everybody can be seen if you are in the bus. So what they did is they position us behind the fire truck, which can be unarmored for the ambulance. At least the people would not become a target at that situation. I think for the ambulance location or the people to exit, there were initial coordination on how the movement of the ambulance should be doing, but the environmental factor that happened is it rained in the time that we need to extract the victims or the people. So the ambulances parked nearer to the bus. So the traffic was not able to be controlled by the police at the time.
All right, thank you, Aloysius. A question from John Lovett. How are you dealing with the issue of lack of formalized training here in the US? We'll park away from the scene and wait until law enforcement clears the area. So that takes us to one of the questions for discussion. Our rule of thumb is we use is if you can see the scene from your ambulance, the person with a gun can see you too.
Yes.
So that is more of a comment, and you've already spoken to the training issue. Rizwana Memon has another comment. Safer access is important in such a scenario. I'd like to discuss these questions with my team and know the responses. Great. So now let's turn to the panel. So Lars Erik, Michael Bradfield, Hannah Kade, and of course also Christophe. If you would like to comment and follow up, focusing on these questions for discussion that are on your screen.
Sure, I can just a brief comment from my side. I think it's a very interesting case where the clear lack of command and control is an issue that that is clearly affecting the situation, and it's very interesting to hear how the SOPs sort of have developed following that, and in a sense it's almost impossible to take all kinds of situations into consideration in the SOP as well. But there was one thing that sort of struck my interest, how you acted as sort of as an intermediary between the police or the authorities and the aggressive family members. Is that something that you've reflected on afterwards? Sort of the risk of taking that role, sort of going in between.
Yes, what we did is, in the situation, we were on the safe side of the situation, but there was a specific situation that is happening in the middle of the event, which is the hostage taking, and then the family feud that happened at the side of the main situation. What we did is, since the police is already in the scene, we let the police, the authorities, to get in control of the situation. And if there is any medical cases or needs from our side, that is the only time that we will engage on that scenario.
Thank you.
All right, Michael Bradfield has a comment or question to follow up. Michael?
Hi, Reda, thank you. And thank you again for the presentation. That was also very interesting, and I think you raised some important issues around communication between different groups. As I know, often we've spoken about what we would do within our organization, but you're quite right that these kind of problems span organizational boundaries. So to ask a question, do you think there would be a way for you to, you mentioned better coordination, find a way for you to all be in contact together? I know in some countries and some settings that large incidents, there can be shared channels of communication. There's an agreed process to switch onto one channel, or do you think that would be too challenging in the context that you work in?
In the Philippine context, since communication is very hard for us, what we did after the situation or after the event, what we did is we have drills and exercises together with all the stakeholders, with the police, other ambulances, the Bureau of Fire, and the local government unit and the national government, on how we can address the situation, or doing tabletops and scenario-based. So even though we don't have any communication, what we can do is, through the drills, we know how each of the organizations do their work.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael. Any other comments or questions from the panel? If not, I would like to turn to the attendees and ask you if you'd like to tackle the three questions. So to tell us, with your ambulance provider, with your organization, how do you deal with these issues? And quickly summarize your responses to the three questions. So to do this, first you need to use the hand raised icon. You should see where it shows the list of participants. You should see a button to raise your hand. Once your hand is raised, I will unmute your microphone, and then the floor will be yours to tell us, to share your answers. Tell us how your ambulance organization deals with the issues we've been discussing. So first of all, we need a volunteer to step up to talk and tackle these three questions. If you're not sure on some of them, that is fine, but we'd love to hear firsthand what this discussion is, how this discussion is getting you to think about what the situation is in your organization. So Uzi Benzivi is first up to bat. So let's hear from Uzi. Uzi, the floor is yours. You have, let's say, 2 minutes to tackle these 3 questions. So please, keep it concise and get to the point. All right. So I need to unmute you as well, I think. Yeah. All right. Or you may need to unmute yourself. Not sure which one it is.
Okay.
Yes, Uzi, go ahead.
First of all, of course, we have a joint coordination protocol with other ambulance providers and first responders. We have one general communication system that everybody carry with a MIRS kind of MIRS of Motorola that everyone have, MDA and the other providers. Second, the procedure we have to coordinate a situation of dispatching, just a moment, what procedures does your organization have in place, dispatching an ambulance in secure context? Okay, the procedure is very simple. We are not getting in before we are sure the situation is clear. The security forces clear the situations, clear the area, so we can provide the help. It's no use to come to a place where there is a gunfire and our crew can be armed. So it's not make any sense. Okay, we have a system that we can speak with the fire brigade, with the army, with the police, with all the other participation, because we are, we are living in an area very unstable situation. So we had 70 years to develop a system like this, and it's worked very well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Uzi Benzivi. So some additional comments. One comment from Syed Adil Hassan, who says training of the crew is the solution to deal with these types of scenes. Rizwana says it's interesting to know that training does take place with all the actors. This prepares for the actual scene. So we have Fabian Cruz, who has raised his hand. So Fabian, thank you. Let me first, open up your microphone. So yes, can you hear us? Are you able to speak to us? And if so, you have 2 minutes to tackle these 3 questions. We have 3 minutes remaining in this webinar. Fabian, over to you.
Hello, hi from Mexico. For the first question, yes, there are joint protocols with another EMS and first responders. Basically, is radio. We share a frequency where everybody can hear and provide feedback in the situations. For the second one, in Mexican Red Cross, there is a procedure that is called safer access. In that case, the same answer, we don't get close to the incident unless we are sure that the situation is secure. We try to coordinate this with the local law enforcement. Even if the incident doesn't involve them, they have the direct communication with us. For the third question, is the difficult one. Basically, it's an official protocol. We are in contact with a single person with the police and a single person with the army, which are the contact where they are the ones providing us with the reliable information about how the situation is. With non-state actors is even more complicated. We live in an area where different criminal cartels are fighting each other for the dominance of the zone, and they change loyalties, they change the actors very often. It's difficult to keep track. Also, they are in no way respecting the humanitarian laws. So it's very difficult to have any communication or protocol with these non-state actors. Basically, our main procedure is to be sure that the scene is safe, and then we can approach. But as time goes by, it's getting more and more difficult, because also there is very few coordination between the different law enforcement agencies that we have here.
Thank you very much. We are now unfortunately out of time, and I note the comment in the chat. It is hard to help you guys with our knowledge in such a short time. We've answered 20 questions, but we still have 9 open questions. We do respect that time is is precious. Thank you for having dedicated this hour to this webinar. One last comment from Dari Akinfosil. The IFRC safety and security programs have helped over time to reduce the associated risks of working in troubled areas. Dari also notes training will really help. However, the reality is that a few things are out of the control of the ambulance crew. Marta Trainer notes that the Safer Access Framework is a good tool. Uzi closes to say thank you all and see you on the 29th. Lars-Erik, back to you to close this webinar and announce indeed the next one.
Thanks for a great summary, Reda. There was, an hour flies by really fast. I think this was a really fruitful discussion. And again, I encourage you both to engage online in the platform with questions and comments and pose dilemmas that you face, continuing these fruitful discussions. And also, we would very much appreciate as organizers and the ambulance team to get your feedback. What works, what does not work, and for the next round, the next planned webinar, we're also really sort of dependent on your input. Would you like to say something about that, Reda, before we close up, or should we do that in writing by email communication?
So we've been discussing, the idea that, in addition to the presentation of case studies from the past, if you have a problem or dilemma that you, your team, your crew, your ambulance organization has not been able to solve yet, you could call on the ambulance community, and the next webinar will ask you to present your challenge and ask everyone to contribute, and hopefully we'll be able to dedicate sufficient time to come up with really helpful answers or guidance or shared experience. So that's the idea, putting that together, and we'll be sharing that with you as soon as it's, we want to get it right as soon as it's ready.
Thanks for a great hour. I hope you learned a bit and got inspired. At least I did a lot. So thanks again for your participation. And on behalf of the ambulance team, I wish you a great evening or morning wherever you are, and see you next time.
Great. And here on screen, you can see the Healthcare in Danger community. So this is what you can join. I've typed the URL in the chat. And definitely, if you want more of this kind of discussion, if you enjoyed hearing about these experiences and want to contribute your own, this is the place to do it. Thank you, and see you in the Healthcare in Danger community, and then next webinar on the 29th. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hello.